দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি চ্যানেল 24 এর বিশেষ আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে। প্রতিবারের মতো এবারও আমাদের সাথে একজন বিশেষ অতিথি আছে। আমাদের সাথে আছে বাংলাদেশের জাতিসংঘের আবাসিক সমন্বয়কারী রবার্ট ওয়াটকিন্স। ওয়েলকাম টু শো।
Thank you.
The world is watching Bangladesh. It's just because unwanted situation we are facing, and of course, from the Secretary General to Mr. Robert Watkins, you are there, even with Bangladesh, with strong stand. But you have been to Cox's Bazar, if I'm not wrong, twice. How do you see the whole situation?
Well, I've been actually many times because you have to take into account that this is a new wave. It's a huge influx, but there have been refugees coming from Myanmar back to the 1990s, and the UN and our NGO partners have had a presence there for quite a long time. And it's an important point to make, because while we're very concerned about the condition of these 425,000 people who've come across in the last few weeks, there's also 300,000 to 400,000 who have been here for a very long time and are living in very difficult conditions. So anyways, I was there just most recently yesterday and the day before that to see how work is progressing to try to address the very urgent needs of this population. I'm sorry to say that we're still not up to where we need to be. People are still living in very, very dire conditions. The weather has not helped at all. It's been raining a lot in the Cox's Bazar area. There's mud everywhere. The roads are congested, both with people and with vehicles.
They're on the open field.
A lot of them are just still without rudimentary shelters out in the forest, in the fields, by the side of the road, wherever they can find a space, really. So we've certainly taken steps within the UN system to ramp up our ability to address this problem. All of the UN agencies now are on emergency fitting, and we have the full support from our headquarters to bring more staff, to bring more material, more financial resources, and so on. But it's still not enough. This is an unprecedented influx of people. It's one of the fastest evolving refugee situations in the world that we've seen in many, many years. And consequently, our ability to address the situation is very much challenged. All I can say is we're doing everything that we can to get up to where we need to be. I hope that if the numbers start to slow down, as they have been over the last few days, that will allow us more time to catch up to where we want to be. But we're working under very, very difficult conditions in the area. It's a very small and challenging area to work in because the roads are very narrow. We don't have easy airport access. The Cox's Bazar airport is great to have there, but it can only receive small planes. We can't bring in the large cargo planes that we need to be bringing in these emergency resupplies. So we have to go send them to Dhaka, get them cleared, and then transporting them out to the area. And that's a challenge in itself. The roads are in a big mess, and they're just overwhelmed. But we have the main roads, which are congested. They're still in reasonably good condition, but they're congested. But more importantly, the roads that we need, the access roads off these main roads, are just covered in mud and are in a very bad condition. So we've been asking the government to immediately try to get the Public Works Ministry to address that and try to build new roads as well as repair the existing ones.
So as we have seen, a lot of women and children is there this time, less than a man. So there is a lot of crisis because there are some women who's feeding their child. They don't have regular food, so it's very tough to feed their child with the breastfeed, especially I'm talking about.
Yes.
And of course the nutrition issue, maybe some diseases. Did you assess all this? Did you assess?
Well, I think it's obvious to everyone that we're very afraid that with this unhealthy living conditions that contribute to contagious diseases. And we are supporting the Ministry of Health in vaccinating all of the population and making sure that, as we can, that we prevent an outbreak of any kind of diseases. But the best way to do that in the long term is to give people shelter, give them access to clean water and sanitation facilities.
And there are some 14,000 shelters about to be
erected
within 10 days, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, well, hopefully even sooner. I think the discussions that we're having now with the government is that we need to have rudimentary shelters before we have more durable shelters, just so that people can be protected from the elements, particularly now the rain and the sun.
Yes, yes.
So we're working on a plan now where we set up tents, and actually, even more quickly, is we give people the construction materials and they build them themselves. The people are very resourceful. They know how to make these shelters very, very quickly with materials that they find available in the area, but with some of the additional supplies that we can give them, so that they can build something very rudimentary. And then in the next phase we can talk about building something more solid and longer lasting.
Yeah, we have seen UNHCR, IOM, all the UN agencies, they're working hard to face the challenge along with government. And we have seen in a press briefing, one of the IOM officials, he said that they don't have the capacity to tackle the whole thing. They're bringing men, they're bringing reliefs, and along with all this capacity. Yeah. At this point of time, my question is, do you think IOM is the perfect body to be given the challenges in the lead role, or UNHCR? Because we heard that IOM will be in the front row and the rest of the agencies will be along with them. What do you think?
That's not really for us to decide. That's for the government to decide. What we think is most important right now is scaling up the response. Coordination, leadership is an important question, but it's a secondary question right now. Right now we've got to get people set up, people protected, people fed, and give them the facilities they need to protect them for health. Really those other issues are of secondary importance.
So what are the key challenges at this moment you sorted out in the last 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, well, clearly it's shelter, sanitation, and food. I mean, all of the health that protection that goes along with that is going to be required, but the health issue can be more quickly addressed by giving people shelter, food, and sanitation. Health has to be addressed at the same time, but right now, if those 3 elements can be put into place, that will go a long way in addressing any serious health concerns that we have.
Right. দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম বাংলাদেশের জাতিসংঘের আবাসিক প্রতিনিধির সাথে, কথা বলছিলাম বর্তমান রোহিঙ্গা ইস্যুতে কিভাবে বাংলাদেশ সরকার সামনের দিনে চ্যালেঞ্জগুলো মোকাবেলা করতে পারে, পাশাপাশি কিভাবে ইউএন আমাদেরকে সাহায্য করছে এবং বর্তমানে কি কি চ্যালেঞ্জ রয়েছে মোকাবেলা করার জন্য। বিশেষ করে তিনি বলছিলেন খুবই অল্প জায়গায় যারা অতিরিক্ত মানুষ চলে এসেছে, রাস্তাগুলো সরু এবং স্বাস্থ্যগত একটা বড় ঝুঁকি রয়েছে, এবং যারা এবারের যারা রোহিঙ্গারা আসছে ওপার থেকে, তাদের জন্য সবচেয়ে বড় সমস্যা হচ্ছে তারা অধিকাংশই শিশু এবং মহিলা, এবং তাদের নানা ধরনের স্বাস্থ্যগত সমস্যা রয়েছে, নানান রোগ প্রতিরোধ রয়েছে, এবং বেশ কিছু রোগ ইতিমধ্যে আলোচনায় এসছে। বিশেষ করে তারা আশঙ্কা করছেন যদি কোনো মহামারী আকারে দেখা যায় তাহলে সেটা আমাদের জন্য অনেক বড় একটা ঝুঁকি হতে পারে। আলোচনা চলতে থাকবে, সাথে থাকুন, ফিরছি একটু পর। আমন্ত্রণ আরও একবার চ্যানেল 24 বিশেষ আয়োজন মুখোমুখিতে। আজ আমরা কথা বলছি রোহিঙ্গা সংকট ও সমাধানের উপায় নিয়ে, এবং আমাদের সাথে অতিথি হিসেবে আছে বাংলাদেশের জাতিসংঘের আবাসিক সমন্বয়কারী রবার্ট ওয়াটকিন্স। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো ওয়ান্স অ্যাগেন। There are also some crises of people being traumatized, being seen the violence. Did you notice that? Did you even notice?
Absolutely, no. I mean, I interacted with a number of the refugees who come across, and I think without exception they all come with horrific stories. We have, I mean, we're approaching that in 2 ways. One, through psychological counseling, as much as possible. Gender-based violence is a very important concern, and we have a number of agencies working in that sector. But also, in the longer term, we have a mission here from the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights, and they are documenting this so that we can do investigations. But the big problem that we have, really, I mean, we have lots of problems here in Bangladesh that we're trying to address immediately, there's no question about that. But we also have to be looking what's happening on the other side of the border. And really what the Secretary General has been appealing for is that we get access to people in northern Rakhine State. If we can get access to that area and provide assistance to people there, it will stop them from coming across the border. If we can build up the kind of communal relations that are necessary for people not to fear for their lives, if we can put an end to the killing, the looting, and the burning of villages, then that will stop people. And that's really, in the longer term, where we've got to be focusing our efforts. In the shorter term, too, insofar as bringing assistance there, but in the longer term, in trying to mend these intercommunal relations. But right now, we're prevented from accessing that area, and that is a huge handicap. And the Secretary General has been appealing to the State Councillor to allow the UN and other humanitarian organizations to get into northern Rakhine State.
And do you see hope to overcome this situation? Because when she spoke a few days back, she sounded like nothing happened there.
Well, I wouldn't be in this job if I didn't have hope. And we certainly hope that she will listen to what we're saying. Right now, there are some positive elements of what she said. A recognition that there's a huge population which has crossed the border into Bangladesh. That's already a recognition that there's a reason, without her specifically saying what is that reason. And she recognizes that they are refugees. And she also mentioned very carefully that she wants to see the implementation of the Rakhine Advisory Committee's recommendations. And foremost amongst those one of those recommendations is reconciliation between communities in northern Rakhine State and the opening up of northern Rakhine State to the UN and other humanitarian agencies. So that's a very positive signal as well.
Okay. So as you also have seen that UN Secretary General, he is sending letters to the Security Council to take some measures to think about this thing. So what is the process in this case? How it goes on? Because if we talk about Security Council, there are 5 members, 2 already shown their face. The world knows it, especially about China and Russia. And rest I don't know, but we are hoping for the best. But is there going to have any sanction on Myanmar? Is that possible? And how, if you want to bring on the humanitarian basis, keeping that thing in mind, how things can work? Or
well, advocacy takes place on many different levels, you can understand. I mean, inside Myanmar, we have a UN representation which is advocating on behalf of the world community, as I said, to get access to northern Rakhine State. We have the executive directors of different UN agencies who are also making statements, including the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Right. The Secretary General himself has spoken directly to the State Councillor, appealing to her for stopping the violence and allowing the UN. Then, of course, there's the Security Council, and we were delighted that the Security Council, for the first time in 9 years, talked about the situation in Myanmar and issued a statement.
They recognize the issue, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's already an important step forward, that there is some solidarity in the Security Council, whereas perhaps in the past there wasn't as much as we're seeing today. Those are very positive steps, and we have to pursue that. And I think the fact that the 72nd General Assembly of the United Nations is taking place right now, Sheikh Hasina is there, and she will be today, as you know, making a statement, and I know that her concerns about what is happening in Myanmar and the impact that it is having on Bangladesh will be foremost amongst the comments that she's going to make. That will also bring pressure and bring attention to the world about what is going on and what needs to be done.
And we have also seen the President Secretary General, he is very he's taking the notes from every moment, because in his speech it shows that he is really taking care of this issue.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not wrong, he was one of the he was in the head of UNHCR as well, so he been to this issue. That's quite a good sign for Bangladesh. But you also talked about the financial aids extra that you are bringing. Will you plus describe in more detail?
First of all, as you know, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres for 10 years was the head of UNHCR, and during that period he had an opportunity to go several times to Myanmar, so he's extremely aware.
He also came to Bangladesh.
And he's been to Bangladesh several times as well. So he knows what the situation is, and he knows the history and the context. So we have the best advocate, I think, as Secretary General right now for this issue. As far as donor response so far, it has been absolutely fantastic. We've had great support from the donors. We launched an appeal on the 9th of September for $78 million, which is now more than 80% covered. Okay. We've got expressions of intent from a number of donors that they will give more. And we're in the process right now of revising that plan, which was at that time intended for 300,000 people for 3 months. Okay. It was just a very quick emergency appeal so that we could get some money into the system so that we could be purchasing supplies. Now that we've got a far larger population and probably more still to come, in addition to the 300,000 that have already been there, and let's not forget that while it's very important that we're addressing the needs of this refugee population, which has come across the border with virtually nothing in most cases, we also have a population of Bangladeshis in the Cox's Bazar area, which has, over the years, and even more so now with this new influx, giving what it has available, whether it be space in their limited homes or sharing food with this population, they have been giving. And as you know, this is not one of the wealthiest areas of Bangladesh. It's an area that has been marginalized economically, and they have great needs. So we're going to include them as well in this revised plan. So we're going to be looking at a caseload of 1.2 million people, at least for the next 6 months, and that will include some 300,000 to 400,000 Bangladeshis who are living in this area. That will include the old caseload of 300,000. It will include the 425,000 that we have right now, and a margin for new arrivals that may be coming in the coming weeks and months.
It's time for another break. We'll keep our discussion going on after the break. দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম মুখোমুখিতে জাতিসংঘের বাংলাদেশ আবাসিক প্রতিনিধির সাথে। আমরা কথা বলছিলাম বর্তমান রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যা সমাধান এবং সামনে কিভাবে এই চ্যালেঞ্জ মোকাবেলা করা যেতে পারে সে বিষয়ে আলোচনা চলতে থাকবে। সাথে থাকুন, ফিরছে একটা বিরতি। আমন্ত্রণ রাখবেন মুখোমুখিতে কথা বলছিলাম রোহিঙ্গা সমস্যা নিয়ে বাংলাদেশে জাতিসংঘের আবাসিক প্রতিনিধির সাথে। ওয়েলকাম টু দ্য শো ওয়ান্স अगेन। Any idea how many come?
Well, I don't know, but what we do know is that the estimated total population of Rohingyas in northern Rakhine State is 1.2 million. So it's not as if the whole population of Myanmar will be coming. We know that this violence is affecting that very specific population right now. So we know that there is potentially the total Rohingya population from northern Rakhine State that could come into Bangladesh.
Right. So how do you see, as Bangladesh has never faced this amount of people coming to Bangladesh within so short notice of time, though they've been coming from last 40 years staying with Bangladesh, UN is also there helping. But do you think Bangladesh is on the right track, addressing the whole issue, facing the challenge of daily food, sanitary issue, health issue? What do you think?
Well, I think Bangladesh has been magnificent in welcoming this population, first of all, and that's the most important point, because there was some uncertainty at the beginning of this latest crisis, and now the Honourable Prime Minister has made it very clear in my conversations with her, as well as public announcements, and as you know, she has been down there personally. The policy of the government is to welcome this population. I think that is already the most important step. Now, everyone is giving their utmost in the government system, and with support of the UN and NGO humanitarian community. We're giving our biggest support, but as I said at the outset, it's still not enough. The need is still greater than what we have so far been able to deliver, and we've got to remedy that as quickly as possible.
And have you got any clear indication from the government that will they going to call them refugee or undocumented citizens of Myanmar? Do you have any clear indication?
Again, to me, that doesn't make any difference. These are people in need, and the government of Bangladesh has welcomed them. We can talk about the particularities of their legal status. We call them refugees. We recognize them as refugees. They are refugees according to international law. What the government of Bangladesh decides to do is the business of the government of Bangladesh. For us, the most important thing is that we have access to these people, and everything has been being put at our disposal to try to address their needs.
At this time, we are of course facing the challenges. We are trying to help with Bangladesh government, with UN bodies trying to help and solve the crisis. But in the long run, if we want to really solve this problem, and if we really see these people smiling, happy, they need to be their place. And for that, I think UN is there to help Bangladesh. But what if it doesn't happen and happily?
Just about everyone who becomes a refugee in the world has a desire to return home, and we know this is the case of this population. That's what they want, that's what we want, that's what the government of Bangladesh wants. So that should be the end game. That's what we're working towards. But in the meantime, we've got to deal with an emergency. And we will have a short-term emergency, and we're going to have a long-term emergency. And that's what I'm reminding the government, that we have to think for the short term to get the needs of these people addressed. But we also have to be thinking at the same time about the long term. What are we going to be doing with this population? And that means housing, food and sanitation, health, education, and so on. I think it's clear that the problem is not going to be solved in the next few weeks or months. So we've
or even in a few years.
Well, I hope it won't take a few years, but we have to be ready for that. And that's what I'm saying. We have to be prepared for the worst case scenario, which is that there's a long-term problem, but we have to keep putting pressure on the government of Myanmar so that these people can go back to their homes.
Last question. How we really can solve this refugee crisis throughout the world? What do you think, having experience of the Bangladesh?
How can we stop it around the world?
Yeah.
Well, that's a tall order. Because at the root of any refugee movement is a political crisis. And we know that the problems in Myanmar cannot be solved through violence. People may be pushed out, or they may choose to leave for whatever reason, but we know that this population is running away because they were running for their lives. That means that we have to address the problem, the root causes of the problem, whether it's in Myanmar or wherever there is a refugee movement. And we know from experience that a military solution is not a permanent solution. It may solve the problem in the short term, but that problem will come back to haunt whatever government is in power in whatever country, where there is a refugee population outpouring. So I think it's very clear we have to be looking at the political level. How do we address the political problems? And in the case of Myanmar, I think it's been extremely important that this advisory commission, which is headed by, as you know, the former Secretary General Kofi Annan, has already come up with some specific recommendations about how the political problem can be addressed. And as I said, I'm very encouraged by the words of the State Councillor that they want to adopt the recommendations made by that advisory commission. And we hope that in so doing, they can solve. We now have the mechanism and the recommendations. We do hope that those can be taken on board, and those can address the political problems, which will allow for a return of the population back to Myanmar in peace and dignity.
I am hopeful like you. Thank you for allowing me within short notice of time. And it's been a pleasure talking with you, and it's been a learning experience as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
দর্শক, আমরা কথা বলছিলাম জাতিসংঘের বাংলাদেশে আবাসিক প্রতিনিধি সমন্বয়কারীর সাথে, এবং তিনি যেটি বলছিলেন, এই সমস্যা, রিফিউজি সমস্যা, শরণার্থী সমস্যা বিশ্বজুড়ে সমাধানের অন্যতম এবং একমাত্র উপায় হতে পারে রাজনৈতিক সদিচ্ছা। কারণ কোনো সামরিক জান্তা দেশ চালাতে নয়, রাজনৈতিক নেতারাই পারেন দেশ চালাতে, এবং তার মাধ্যমে এই সমাধান করা সম্ভব। দেখা হবে মুখোমুখির আগামী পর্বে অন্য কোনো অতিথির সাথে।